In my life, there seems to be this pattern where basically I have periods of busyness and hustle, followed by periods of stagnation and nothingness. But even during those busier periods, I never seem to feel completely satisfied. I wanted to try and get to the bottom of this. Is it an issue of my efficiency as a person? Am I a piece of shit? Why does it feel like at the end of so many days, nothing I did truly mattered? I'm 31 and I've struggled for many years to do the things that are most important to me and make me feel most alive. The inability to do these things is complex and definitely worth exploring. But recently I noticed there was one thing in particular that was taking a lot of my attention and energy without necessarily giving much back in return. My phone. I forced myself to sit down and do a tally of how many hours I spend on my phone each and every day. And then I calculated how much that amounted to per year. This took me back to a memory of when I was 12 years old and my family got our first computer. And back then I remember there was something already somewhat distorted about the way that I bonded with screens. Oh God, what? Excuse me? I'm playing Sims! Could you please get off the phone? I just need to call the electricity company. Our power's about to be cut off. Eat die, mother. Okay, we'll just make sure you get off today. Love you. I decided I was going to do an experiment. A 2-week smartphone detox. I would only be able to use this burner phone. I would also be keeping a daily video diary of my progress. And to make things easier, I would only be allowed to go on social media for 5 minutes a day across all devices.
I'm already finding myself unconsciously reaching for my phone, which is really frustrating. And a couple of times I actually have picked up my phone and started like doing these ones. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 14 days and to see what changes. But right now I'm definitely feeling frustrated and at my own inability to just leave my phone alone. Here's to making choices.
I started to become interested in finding out about some of the studies into smartphone use. So I took to the trusty interwebs and did some research. What I discovered was interesting, but then a lot of the information was also quite troubling. I found a TED talk by a guy named Adam Alter, who is a professor of business and psychology, and he did some research on Steve Jobs. After raving on about the experience of some of his devices, Steve Jobs was asked the question of whether his kids enjoy using the devices at home. And he said, they haven't used it. We limit how much technology we use at home. Now, Adam also discovered that there is a school in Silicon Valley called the Waldorf School of the Peninsula, and they aren't allowed to have screens until they enter 8th grade. Coincidentally, 3/4 of the students that go to this school, their parents are high-level Silicon Valley execs.
You want to know a secret? Some of the tech world's biggest gurus are actually sending their own children to schools without a single computer. They're called Waldorf schools, and they are unplugged on purpose.
Students use actual paper and pencils.
Technology gets introduced. It's just something you experience later when it's not gonna hypnotize you.
There's also another elephant in the room. Smartphones have now been declared addictive. We get an instant high every time our screen lights up with a notification. And dopamine gets released every time we do something that we enjoy, like listening to music or getting 109 subscribers. Dopamine reinforces and motivates behaviour, in turn creating addiction. Researcher Adam Alter also broke down a 24-hour period for the average human being, 8 hours of which is sleeping, 9 to 9.5 hours is work, and then for 3 hours a day we engage in what is called survival activities. So eating, bathing, looking after our kids. That leaves this other space, which is incredibly important to us, and that is our personal time. This is also the space where we can engage in what clinical psychologist Joel Minden refers to as antidepressant behaviours: self-care, socialising, and doing the things that are most meaningful to us. And when people look back at the end of their lives at what was the most meaningful part, it is that sacred space that they're talking about. In 2007, when the iPhone first came out, this is how much space screen time took up. Here's 8 years later. And now, this is 2 years ago. This is how much of our most important time was taken up by a screen. Adam also mentions that the apps that make us the least happy and that we spend coincidentally the most time on actually lack something, and that is called a stopping cue. A stopping cue is basically a cue that tells us to move on and to do something different. And during the 20th century, stopping cues were everywhere. Chapters in books, watching the end of an episode on broadcast television. These days, so many things are bottomless. A strategy that Adam suggests is that rather than finding a time every day, he looks at things that we do every day. And so he's created this rule where every time he has dinner, which happens every day, he makes sure that his phone is as far away as possible. By doing one simple thing, people often feel encouraged and they end up doing it in the morning, making sure their phone is out of reach and turned off at night. It has a flow-on effect.
I'm definitely feeling more relaxed, and I feel almost as if like my body, my everything is just decompressing more and more. Another thing that was really interesting to me is that over the course of the 14 days, social contact, social interactions became really, really important, and I became a lot more dependent on others. Another thing I realized is I haven't experienced boredom in a very long time. For somebody who wants to be creative with their life, not allowing my mind to be bored and allowing like thoughts and ideas to percolate in that way is, if I'm not able to do that, then I am in big trouble. I don't feel like this has given me like all the answers, but I feel like this has put me in a better position to ask questions, and I've had the space to be able to see things more clearly, and I actually just don't want it to end.
It's almost relieving to me to be able to acknowledge that sometimes I am operating from this unconscious, deeper operating system. So while the research may still be inconclusive, it's still worthwhile checking in with yourself and how you feel after spending copious amounts of time using your smartphone. It could be harmless, or it could be an opportunity to improve your mental well-being and your connection with yourself and your connection with others. And me? Well, after the experiment, I've decided that I'm going to continue using my burner phone and keeping my smartphone at home because I just can't control myself. And now I know why. Time is precious, and having more of it and having the ability to be fully present might just give you a fighting chance of figuring out what truly matters in life. Thank you for watching. I will see you next fortnight.